So, Mazes and Minotaurs is a completely free game, but one of the things you can download is a DM screen, which comes with some nice pictures of the covers of the books without writing on them. I use these for the back covers of my books, but I also use them for the DM screen. Let's open this if I can. Mine broke in half from use. I used it so much that it broke. But yeah. So it's got most of the things, actually more things than you actually look up in gameplay. This weather thing is something that I do look up quite a bit. But encumbrance and equipment, I only look at that in character creation, and I usually look it up in the book. The NPC reactions is something I sometimes use. The experience thing, I usually look that up in the book. Same with the attribute score, that's looked up in character creation in the book. The battle round. The battle is done in several phases. First is the decision phase. And I've actually had to add some phases to this. The decision phase is where you declare what you're going to do. And the person with the worst initiative has to declare first, and the person with the best initiative gets to declare last. So spearmen, who usually have really good initiative, they get to declare last and strike first. Barbarians, who have usually really bad initiative, they have to declare first and strike last. After this declaration is the missile phase. So Amazons and hunters, they usually get to strike first because the missile phase comes first. Then there's the movement phase. So after the missiles go off, then you can move. And then is the melee phase, where melee attacks can happen next. And I've had to add a couple of more phases because grappling and pummeling attacks happen at the end of the melee phase. So I've added that its own phase, the grappling phase, because there's a monster who has a really high initiative who attacks by grappling. So they declare last, but they also attack last because grappling happens after melee attacks. And then finally, the very last phase is the magic goes into effect phase, because magic happens last, but you have to declare first there. So whatever your initiative is, you do your declaration that I'm going to cast a spell, and it doesn't take effect until the end. So if you get hit during that time, then your spell gets disrupted, but you only get one round to disrupt the magician's spell. The next round, even if you've got a high initiative, you've missed your chance. The spell's already gone into effect. So here it tells about some of the different things: armor class, how to do combat, facing, retreat, weapon damage. That's one thing about this game is once you're engaged in combat, in melee combat, it's hard to break that if you try to move away, they move with you. So in order to disengage, you have to not attack, and you have to not be hit for a whole round. And when that happens, then you can run away. Weapon damage for almost everything is 1d6. The only exception is daggers, which do 1d3. However, if daggers are used for sneak attacks, they do 1d6 too. Alright, so here's missile. Tells the ranges for the different missile weapons. There's some modifiers, which I have not used in game. It's a complication. There's some melee tactics you could use, and here they all are. And it talks about unarmed combat, taking wounds. generally the way it works is if you get knocked to 0 hit points or less, you make a physical vigor roll with a target of 10. If you fail, you die. If you pass it, you're incapacitated unless you roll a 20, in which case you can still fight, but if you take another hit, then you're dead. Healing is really hard in this game. It takes a long time, which is why the healing spell-casting classes are very important. There's some more about attacks. And this page is the critical hits, which I hated critical hits until Mazes and Minotaurs. Creatures cannot score critical hits. This is something for players only. However, monsters can fumble. So there's a chart for fumbles. And in order to score a critical hit, you have to exceed your target number by at least 10. So wimpy monsters, it's really easy to do critical hits against. But there's some monsters that are so tough it's impossible to do a critical hit against them. You got to wear them down 1 hit point at a time. And they're separate. So if you make a critical hit, then you roll a d20 and look on this chart. And 20 is instant kill. But most of the cases, you just knock them down so they're +4 to hit or +2 to hit, something like that. So that is the Mazes and Minotaurs DM screen. Maze Masters. It's called Maze Masters Aegis.